we have too much government? We need to put people ahead of corporate profits. This system is so lopsided. This threat is a real threat to democracy.
And I think that's really important. That's something we haven't been doing in this country for a long time.
Where do you start? What do you do? How do you do it?
Access to Democracy and other Eagan community television programming is supported by Thomson Reuters, makers of Westlaw Next and based in Eagan. Through Westlaw Next and other innovative online services, Thomson Reuters is the world's leading source of intelligent information for businesses and professionals. Online at thomsonreuters.com. And by U.S. Federal Credit Union, the member-owned financial institution offering service, value, and experience you can trust to the greater Twin Cities community.
Miller, we have a return guest, and I'm very pleased to have him. Mike Christenson, who is the Associate Vice President of Minneapolis Community College, or Minneapolis Community and Technical College, if we want to be accurate. And Mike is really in charge of workforce development at the school, which is a funny place for a lawyer to end up. So why don't you take us down that path a little bit, and then we'll talk about what we're talking about in terms of workforce development.
Well, Alan, thanks for having me back. It's great to see you and great to be on the show and great to share some of the good news from MCTC throughout the Metro. I grew up in a family of public servants. My father, Jerry Christenson, was a longtime veteran in state government. My mother was a choir director, so we were all taught public service at a very early age, both in the church and in government life. And I had the chance to go to the University of Minnesota Law School for about $1,000 a semester is what it cost back at the time I graduated.
A little different today.
A little different today.
Yeah.
Back in 1984, I graduated, went to work at a big law firm in Minneapolis, a very civic-minded firm called Popham Hague, with former legislators and a lot of public servants. And then one of my big clients was the Metropolitan Transit Commission, MTC, as it was then known. And they asked me to run the place in 1990, and I served there for 3 years and have been in and out of public service ever since.
And you were used to the letters MTC, so switching to MCTC had to be just
nothing to it.
A walk in the park.
Nothing to it. So I also had a chance to work in city government with Mayor Rybeck and 13 council members. And we did a couple really interesting things to the development function of city government when I was there. The first thing we did was really focus on workforce development. The city of Minneapolis was way ahead of its time, and I credit Council Member Lisa Goodman and Mayor Rybeck and all the council members for really seeing how important workforce development was to the economic life of the city. It was thought at that point, when I broke into city service, that economic development was all about reclaiming lands, doing great corporate sites, and helping downtown businesses with tax increment financing. Really, economic development is fundamentally about raising incomes.
I have to say that Mayor Rybeck says that you were more responsible for the flourishing and development of downtown Minneapolis than any other individual, which is a pretty nice accolade to be thrown your way.
Yeah, it's a very nice thing for him to say, but it also isn't true. He and the 13 council members did more to get the city on its current really hot path than I did, but I certainly enjoyed serving with that team of talented elected officials.
And you gravitated to the college.
Well, I've had a chance to work in the Phillips neighborhood with the neighbors there and the corporate entities on redeveloping that community. And Phillips is really an example of what a renaissance can look like in an urban community. And when we set out to do that work, we worked with some lions in the Phillips neighborhood. Joe Salvaggio, a longtime resident, former Catholic priest and founder of the Project for Pride in Living, Steve Kramer and his colleagues at PPL. really said to us, listen, we're fine if the corporate campuses want to expand and really want to try to turn around this neighborhood. We would not be fine with gentrification. What this neighborhood needs is rising household incomes, rising property values for those heroes who have stuck it out in the very challenged Phillips neighborhood of the 90s, and in a more secure future. And that's what's happened. What's happened is Phillips, all those corporate sites expanded, all the real estate dreams came true, but Phillips still lags, and importantly in some measures of community health. So at that point, I talked to the mayor and council and said, I really think the key intervention in our urban areas, especially the challenged neighborhoods, is on the workforce side of things and education. We don't need real estate interventions, we need educational interventions in inner city.
And what is your mission at MCTC?
Well, MCTC is really a spectacular place to practice this art, because MCTC is all about earning a credential, and that credential having economic value in this economy. So if you look at how the city of Minneapolis has performed, top city in the country in employment terms, lowest unemployment rate in the country, all you have to do is really develop an educational system, a higher education campus that performs well into that economy. So that's our goal. What we're really trying to do is to ensure that all students have the chance to succeed, they graduate on time, they move quickly, and they're well guided into high-performing career pathways. That's what we're up to.
So, speaking of that, all the volunteers here who are MCTC students or graduates, raise your hand. I see hands going up every place, including the control room. And some of them were interns, the rest of them now are volunteers as that program dried up, but it's important. And
64%, Alan, of paid internships in this nation mature into permanent employment. So collegiate internships may be even more important than step-up internships. In Minneapolis, the step-up program has hired over 20,000 Minneapolis youth into professional career tracks. We believe collegiate internships are even more important. So let me talk about a very exciting initiative. I just left a meeting with the 5 metro Hennepin County MNSCU presidents, where they were getting briefed by Hennepin County. And Hennepin County Administrator David Huff and his colleague John Thorson were briefing these 5 institutions on how they are going to be hiring out of MNSCU institutions.
Yeah, we were looking forward to John being with us today. He couldn't, but I hope that we can get him here another time to talk about the county's approach to this.
Well, let's do that. But what they were saying today is they've hired their 46th MCTC students in the last 2 months. They've hired 46 of our MCTC students as interns or full-time on human services and IT tracks.
In Hennepin County.
In government service. Their goal by the end of the year, 200.
Really?
They hope 200 interns, 200 permanent employees would be drawn from MCTC and other MNSCU campuses in Hennepin County. The point they were making today to these presidents was, imagine the return on investment if you take someone who currently is on public assistance and get them performing well in the Hennepin County workforce as a human services representative that makes $18.73 an hour starting, full pension, health care benefits. Suddenly you go from an expense at the county to income, tax-paying income, and that was the return on investment David Huff described to these MNSCU presidents today, to great applause. The MNSCU presidents in turn said, we believe that MNSCU, a system, is economic development, that this is the most fundamental part of the work of economic development in the state of Minnesota. So very exciting conversation.
And those are very exciting numbers also. Now, as the economy has gotten better, has that eased doing what you're doing, or are they separate and apart, really?
Well, it's the phone's ringing more often. So there's no question we're already in a workforce shortage position in healthcare. We see the job postings every day on software that has been licensed to MCTC through the efforts of MnSCU, Itasca, and Hennepin County, and MSP WIN. Those 4 partners have allowed us to hold a license now that we can share with our students. So there's no mystery anymore as to what the job market looks like for us. We see every job posting in the metro. We see all the credentials required for those postings. We see how long they've been up, what their average salary is. So we know, for example, that over the last 4 months, Fairview has posted 800 times for nurses. So they
And
are,
of course, MCTC has a nursing program.
which starts 108 nurses every August in a 2-year program with a 3rd year at Augsburg for a Bachelor's of Science in Nursing. So you can get your nursing degree in 3 years working through the first 2 years at MCTC and the last year at Augsburg. That nursing program is so hot that we don't have to even recruit into it. It is so well known on the streets, and that there's a lesson there. If you build a program that reliably brings people into high-wage jobs, you don't have to do much marketing. They'll be there.
I have a great slogan: if you build it, they will come.
There you go.
And
That works.
it worked then too.
Yes, indeed.
In a fine movie. So when something like Target suddenly announces that they're going to cut 2,000 jobs, does that impact you? Does that affect you at all?
Well, sure, it can. We get on the phone with our Target friends at the executive level and first of all ask, as those people get their notices, they're also entitled to dislocation benefits, and a key part of dislocation benefits is retraining. So MCTC and other colleges can perform as retrainers for those people who want to make a career switch once those layoff notices are served. It obviously has an impact on Target's hiring. Companies that do layoffs also occasionally hire during the layoffs because they're making shifts in the way the company works and the way they're allocating human resources. But it obviously is going to slow down hiring from the biggest employer downtown. Interestingly, in working this morning with the county leadership, if you put together the numbers of Hennepin County employees and Hennepin County Medical Center, which is a separate nonprofit right now, that is now the biggest employer in downtown. Hennepin County and HCMC, if you considered them together, would have more employees even than Target. So for our students...
What about the University Hospital? Is that also in Hennepin County?
Yes, very large. But the university and the University Hospital, I believe, is about 7,000, 8,000 employees right in Hennepin County. They obviously have a lot in St. Paul. They have a lot statewide. I think 26,000 statewide. So it's probably the largest employer statewide. But just in Hennepin County, if you look at that, there is no question for MCTC, Hennepin County is our most important employer.
And it's a great opportunity for the students. Now they can actually start working in the hospitals while they're going to school, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, and we're promoting that. So we have a program called C3 Fellows. That stands for the Central Corridor Fellowship Program. And what we're doing on C3 Fellows is we're promoting any kind of hospital job before you graduate with your nursing degree. So in other words, environmental services jobs at HCMC for a future nurse at HCMC are good for both sides. It's good for the employer, HCMC, who wants that future employee to be more prepared. It's good for the student because she gets an earlier shot at a higher wage job in a hospital setting. So,
and familiarizing oneself with the hospital, with the procedures, with what's going down there, so that you can have what they call, I guess, a seamless transition from college right into a high-paying job.
And it makes all the sense in the world. None of these ideas are new, Alan. You know, remember the notion of a candy striper or a resident? Candy stripers were early volunteers who were interested in nursing, and they would move up even before they got their nursing degree in hospital employment. Residencies had meaning. You were a resident either as a nurse or a physician in training. You actually lived in the hospital, and they used you around the clock to do patient service. Residency had meaning. Now you can be a resident at the University Hospital and live in Shoreview. But back then, when you were a resident in a hospital, you had a residence next to Abbott Northwestern Hospital, in this case an historic mansion, where a bunch of hospital residents lived and trained. Well, they had their way of moving up these hospital career tracks back then. We simply have to reimagine them.
So we're going back to the old days.
Correct.
To create a better new day.
Exactly. These career tracks, I mean, have been used for over a century in healthcare. Now, interestingly, every industry is different. No industry in the state is more organized in terms of workforce development than hospitals. They get it. They've been working together forever. For example, there is a statewide database that allocates all the clinical rotations across all the hospitals in the state. No industry has that level of organization that you see basically out of nursing departments that have shared workforce strategies for a long time. Other industries are starting to see the benefits of that, so we're seeing more organization across competitors to develop the workforce. It's obvious, for example, in this economy now with $2 billion in building permits in the city of Minneapolis last year, that a more organized approach to preparing people for construction trades would really pay off for the state of Minnesota. So you see Summit Academy, St. Paul College.
All you have to do is look at downtown Minneapolis, right, and the number of cranes, which is really it's incredible.
Or Alan, look at the workforce that Mortensen is bringing to the Viking Stadium site.
Yeah.
You can't miss that if you're driving by that and you see at 7 a.m. those people carrying a lunchbox into the Viking Stadium site. That is Minnesota diversity. So we congratulate Mortensen for hitting their minority and female hiring targets, and Summit Academy, which has contributed to that with two colleges, St. Paul College and Minneapolis Community and Technical College, playing a supporting role there.
Now, there was a time when enrollment was up around 14,000 at MCTC, and it's down now, which has caused some problems, financial problems, and problems with certain programs. The result of that really was that the economy got better, and a lot of people who were going to college to retrain, as you said, suddenly were able to get jobs or jobs back.
Right.
And that had a negative impact on the college, however.
No question. Technical colleges are counter-cyclical. Community colleges, a little less so. State colleges, a little less so. But if you can compete for a job with no college credential at $12 to $14 an hour, you're likely to do it. But at MCTC, what we're screaming out loud and clear is that we can now prove, based on the software we have at MCTC, the value of an associate degree. We don't have to guess anymore. There have been national studies, and you've seen some of those estimates, and based on the compilation of salaries from every day's job postings, we can show our students the exact value of an associate degree in any given moment. Yesterday it was $50,000 in annual income. If you have a high school diploma, the average salary across all experience levels yesterday was $37,000. So $37,000 if you have a high school diploma, over $50,000 if you have an associate degree at MCTC. Okay?
And that's a big difference.
It's a big difference. It's
Especially
$13,000.
The head of a family, for instance.
Exactly. It's a $13,000 annual difference. So you will retire the full cost of your 2 years at MCTC in 1 year of income. That's a tremendous ROI, and you're going to be earning that for the rest of your life.
And of course, the cost of attending MCTC is a lot less than, say, a university. Community colleges cost less. And not only that, but there are scholarships available. There are federal programs available. Because most of the students, in my experience there, have jobs or have other obligations. So
If
they
you're-
have to
yeah.
balance that
Yep.
with their schooling.
Right, Alan. If you're a full-time student at MCTC, you're paying $5,200 a year for tuition. So you will recover that if you earn an associate degree in any of these high-placing fields. You'll recover your investment the first year.
Now, does the state's surplus, which just, as a matter of fact, increased more than the estimate, and money for education, does that factor into your job?
Some. A couple of things about that. As you're aware, Alan, tuition once covered 1/3 of the costs of all higher ed in the Minnesota school higher education system. Now it covers 2/3. State supports once covered 2/3 of all total costs. Now it covers 1/3. I thought it was really interesting that two physicians representing two really important healthcare organizations in this state penned an editorial 2 weeks ago in the Minneapolis Star-Tribune. The question was, what is the most important thing you could do to increase health across the state? And their opinion was that you would invest more in education and less in healthcare. Now think about that. Those are
That's
two
interesting,
physicians
yeah.
saying that for the long term, there's no question that your health outcomes improve more through education and with a college degree than you would if you were actually spending money on healthcare services. I thought that was a really important, very important point. So we know that so much happens when you earn that college degree. It's the fundamentals of economic development. As soon as you have that credential, your income and earning potential grows. As soon as your income and earning potential grows, you get more exciting to Minnesota companies that are basically making money in this state. You get more exciting to all employers. And all employers get more excited about companies that have that kind of workforce growing up around them. It's simple. That's economic development.
So other than, it's not simple, but you make it sound simple and you implement it so you make it simple. For instance, however, there are other areas other than healthcare, other businesses. You mentioned construction as one. Do your tentacles reach out in other areas as well?
Oh, sure. We are really attracted to IT. The IT sector is very hot. The hottest company in the state in hiring terms is United Healthcare. United Healthcare has over 3,000 active IT postings right now. They are responsible for Obamacare sites across the United States, the websites, the state-operated websites operated out of Optum, a lot of hiring there. So IT for the Metro is a huge industry. The downtown continues to invest heavily. All the financial institutions heavily weighted towards IT jobs. There are three other sectors that are really interesting to us. Public services, no question, will get hit so hard by retirements. Hennepin County is predicting that 34% of their workforce will retire in the next 5 years. 34% of 8,000 employees, do the math. They're going to hire 2,000 to 3,000 employees.
Now we're talking about police, we're talking about fire, we're talking about security, we're talking about what else?
Human services, you're talking about IT professionals, you're talking about healthcare workers, you're talking about public administrators, you're talking about budgeting and finance folks, talking about public works and facilities engineers. All of those job descriptions Hennepin County's analyzing right now. And they've done a most remarkable thing. They've simplified their minimum qualifications. They're saying to MCTC, we're going to make the path from graduation with an associate degree straight into county employment easier. We're going to drop BA requirements where they're not needed. We are going to credit experience as well as life experience as well as degrees. And so what's happened is they've really opened their arms to the graduates of Minnesota's community and technical colleges. And they hired 17 graduates of a 9-credit course in human services in November. And all 17 remain in county employment. So far so good. And our hope is that we will continue to be a reliable partner with the county and their future workforce.
Obviously, you've developed a good working relationship with them.
Every
Plus,
day.
with your experience and your background, it just lends itself to that.
Well, every day, Alan, it's really interesting what the county board's trying to do across the county and how important and central preparing their workforce has become to them as they try to deal with economic development countywide. They're basically saying the fundamentals of economic development are raising household incomes. In those households which are supported expensively in some cases by tax dollars through public assistance, food stamps, county supervision, criminal justice payments, we are going to try to shift those investments into workforce development, starting with our employees.
Do you work with the legislature also as well?
Yes, of course. I mean, MCTC obviously is called upon by MNSCU, which leads, of course, the legislative work of the higher ed in the state. And we're asked to testify. So last week, our friends at Graco testified about the very similar partnership they have with MCTC, where they're actually helping invest in our machine tooling lab. They're helping our students get internships at Graco, and then, of course, permanently placing them in their extremely successful Riverside plant campus. Angie Wardell is a Graco executive who has pioneered this career pathway in Graco. We're grateful for her leadership. She had a chance to testify at the legislature last week.
Well, it's really fascinating to me how workforce development has really become so prominent, so necessary, but in addition to that, it's become so effective and so successful. And got to attribute a lot of that to you and the connections you've made and the work that you've done, which doesn't come as a surprise to me after reading all the accolades you've gotten in the past. I hope you'll come back again in a few months as this all progresses and talk to us again, because I can't think of anything that's more important in the world that we're living here, and in the quality of education and the quality of life that's so great in Minnesota, than seeing the success of students going out and contributing to society. And we've been talking with Mike Christenson, who's Associate Vice President of MCTC. He's an attorney and has done an incredible job of fostering relationships that are benefiting our students. And I don't know if you have any closing thoughts, so you've got about 20 seconds.
Well, Alan, again, nothing new. There's nothing new about what you just said, although it's very important. My father was saying those things in 1971 when he worked with a bunch of brave elected officials that revolutionized education in the state. They understood that. We get it. Let's go.
Mike, so much thanks.
Yep.